Welcome back. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and follow me at DirtleMTG on Twitter to keep up to date with the most recent videos and other posts. You can help support this content by hitting like and share, and by checking out the links in the description below. Alright, it's time to dirtle. Hello. Our visit today is to the swamps of Urborg. Wait, weren't we just here a second ago? Anyway, we're seeking out Moira, Urborg haunt. Sloshing through the murk as well are Leinore, Ziatora, and Kaalia. The Kaalia player wins the die roll and drops a Savai Triome. I draw a Mortuary Mire and play it. Leinore starts their game with the Snow Plains, and then casts Champion of the Parish. Sulphurous Mire hits the field for the Ziatora player, making it the second Mire of the game. 8 points to play for Kaalia, and they pass. I draw a Sword of the Animist, which makes me feel better about the hand I kept, and drop a Swamp. I then cast the Sword, and the turn rolls over. Leinore puts a Snow Forest to play, and then casts Steward of Valoron. The champion gains a counter, and the player moves to combat. They swing the champion at the Kaalia player, dealing 2. Ziatora's turn has a forest to the field. Warlock class hits the stack, and after reading it, it might be problematic to my strategy. They tap their forest and pass. Over to Kaalia, and they drop a mountain. Hall Monitor is then cast. My turn has Panharmonicon to hand. I play a swamp, and then cast my commander, the Urborg Haunt. The Leinore player is straight to combat, with the champion into me and the steward into the Ziatora player. I don't block, and we each take 2. In the second main, the Restoration of Igunjo is cast, and the Leinore player grabs themselves a plains from their deck. They then play the land. Ziatora's turn has them level up the Warlock class, which allows them to look at the top 3 and choose 1 to their hand and the others to the graveyard. A mountain comes down, and the turn rolls over. Kaalia's turn has them playing a swamp. They then cast their commander, which luckily doesn't have haste. My turn brings along some Trailblazer's boots. I play Shizo, Death Storehouse, and then equip Moira with the sword. I decide to start making friends, and evoke a Shriekmaw from my hand. When it enters, I destroy the Hall Monitor. The Shriekmaw dies because of evoke, and I move to combat. I swing Moira at the Ziatora player, and the sword triggers, and grabs me a swamp tapped to the battlefield from my deck. I deal 4 commander damage to the defending player, and Moira triggers. This brings back my Shriekmaw to the battlefield since it died this turn. It triggers, and I choose to destroy the champion of the parish. Back to Leinore, and the restoration triggers. This brings back the recently discarded to its effect, Weathered Wayfarer, tapped to the battlefield. They then cast their commander, the Autumn Sovereign. Quick to combat, and the steward gains a 1/1 counter, and the player draws a card. Ziatora plays a forest for their turn, and passes. Kaalia drops a swamp to the field and moves to combat. They swing Kaalia at the Ziatora player, and their commander triggers. A Sunblast Angel is put to the field, and it triggers to wipe out all tapped creatures. The Ziatora player responds with Infernal Grasp on the Angel, destroying it. The Angel trigger then resolves, and Moira goes back to the command zone. The Kaalia player then quits the game. My turn sees a Fleshbag Marauder to hand. After reading the Restoration of Igunjo, I decide to recast my commander and wait on the Fleshbag. In combat, I send the Shriekmaw into the Leinore player, dealing 3. To the Leinore player, and the Saga flips into the Architect of Restoration. Scorned Villager is cast afterward. To the combat phase, and the Architect gains a counter, and the player draws a card, and they pass. Ziatora's turn sees Proving Grounds to the field. Vargoth Bloodsky Sire then hits the field, and they pass. I draw a swamp and play the land. I equip the Sword of the Animist to Moira, and follow that up with the Fleshbag Marauder. It enters, and I sacrifice the Shriekmaw while Vargoth and the Villager hit the bin. I move to attacks, and swing my commander at the Ziatora player for 4, grabbing a swamp when I do so. Moira connects, and I return the Shriekmaw to play. The Architect is destroyed by the trigger, and I pass. To Leinore, and they cast Audric, Master Tactician. They gain a counter in combat, and the turn rolls. Ziatora cast another favorite card of mine, Brash Taunter, and they pass. I draw High Market. I drop it to the table, thankful for a sack outlet. I look through my opponent's graveyards, and then use High Market to sacrifice my Marauder. I go to attacks, and assign my commander to Leinore and Shriekmaw to Ziatora, gaining another swamp. Damage is good, and Moira triggers to bring back the Marauder. It enters, and Audric, Taunter, and the Marauder all die. In the second main, I cast Sepulchral Primordial, and steal Audric and Mr. Orfeo from my opponent's graveyards. A forest comes down for Leinore, and they cast Eternal Witness. Weathered Wayfarer is returned to the hand, and then recast. To the combat phase, and Leinore gives a counter to the Witness, and the player draws a card. A command tower hits the field for the Ziatora player. It's followed up with Massacre Girl, and they wipe the board except for the creature itself. At the end of the turn, Warlock class triggers, and each of their opponents loses 1 life. On my turn, I gain a Grave Titan. I cast Agent of Erebos, and when it enters, I exile Ziatora's graveyard. I then cast Panharmonicon, and pass. Leinore has Luminarch Aspirant to the field. Urborg Grazer hits the stack afterward. Into the combat phase, and the Aspirant triggers and gains a 1/1 counter to itself. To the Dragon Boss, and they cast a Soul Ring. They then cast Animate Dead on my Primordial in the yard, and they return it to the battlefield, under their control. With their Primordial's trigger, they steal the Marauder and the Steward of Valeron from their opponent's yards. With the ETB of the Marauder, Agent of Erebos, Urborg Grazer are sacrificed along with the Marauder itself. The Ziatora player moves to attacks, and swings Massacre Girl into me, and I take 4. In the second main, the player casts Ruthless Technomancer. It enters, and they sacrifice the Stolen Primordial to create 5 treasure tokens. At the end of turn, the Warlock class drains their opponents for 1. I draw Ravenous Chupacabra on my turn. I cast Grave Titan, and double the tokens when it enters thanks to Panharmonicon. I then equip the Sword of the Amethyst to the Titan, and pass. Leinore casts a Timeless Witness, and when it enters, they return a card from the graveyard to hand. Weathered Wayfarer comes down again, and the turn rolls. Back to Ziatora, and Involuntary Employment is used to take my Titan and create a treasure token. They then cast their commander and move to attacks. All available creatures swing at me, but I get a land from the sword since I still control the equipment, and my opponent makes 2 zombie tokens. I block the Steward to kill it in trade with a zombie token, and chump the Titan with another token, deciding to take the rest. I take 6, and drop to 27. At the end step, Warlock class drains for 1, and Ziatora triggers. Grave Titan is sacked to that trigger, and I take an additional 7 damage to the face, while they gain 3 more treasure. My turn delivers a Desecrated Tomb. I cast the Ravenous Chupacabra, and double up on the killing, destroying Ziatora and the Massacre Girl. Sword of the Amethyst is then equipped to a zombie token. I continue the turn with the tomb to the field. Moving to combat, I swing the equipped token into the Ziatora player and gain another land. The defending player doesn't block, and takes 3. Leinore's turn has them activate the Wayfarer and grab a land from their deck. Yavimaya Hollow hits the field. They then cast Contortionist Troop, and it enters with 4 1/1 counters. In the combat phase, it gains an additional counter from the Aspirant, and they pass. Ziatora's turn begins with the activating of the Ruthless Technomancer, sacrificing 5 treasures to bring back the Massacre Girl. I respond by sacking the equipped token to High Market to gain 1 life, and the Ziatora player responds with the Malachor Rebirth targeting the Technomancer. Massacre Girl then goes to resolve all of their triggers, and the field is cleared. When the Technomancer returns in the middle of these triggers resolving, they sacrifice the Massacre Girl to gain 4 treasure, although the Technomancer does not survive the rest of the triggers. Some of the new treasure is then used to resummon their commander, and at the end of turn, Warlock class does the thing. I draw Sign in Blood, and immediately cast it for some more options. I gain Minions Return and Felwar Stone. This is okay, I suppose. I cast the stone, and then follow that with the Peregrine Dynamo. I pass with mana up for Minions Return. Leinore's turn has them cast Everbook Caretaker, and they pass. The Dragon Boss puts a Rogue's Passage down, and I begin to seriously worry about my life total. They then level Warlock class to the last level, which worries me even more. In combat, they surprise me and swing their commander into the Leinore player, dealing 6 damage, and they drop to 24. The turn goes to roll, and the Leinore player takes an additional 6 damage from the Warlock class trigger, and the Leinore player ends the turn at 18. I draw the glorious and wonderfully timed Noxious Gearhulk, and Everbrook Caretaker transforms into Hollowhenge Huntmaster. I immediately cast the Gearhulk, and when it enters, I destroy only Ziatora and gain 6 life, going up to 23. I let the other trigger fizzle, and then equip the sword to the Peregrine Dynamo. Going to combat, I swing the creature into the Ziatora player, gaining another swamp and dealing 2. I pass with mana up again for minion's return. Leinore's turn has an Abzan Battle Priest hit the field, giving lifelink to creatures they control with 1/1 counters. Into combat, and each creature they control gains 2 1/1 counters. Things have gotten scary a little bit quickly. They assign the Huntmaster into the Ziatora player, dealing 8 and gaining 8, with the defending player dropping to 9, and them gaining up to 26. Ziatora has a Spire Garden to the field. They then cast another wipe in Damnation. I respond with sacking Peregrine Dynamo to the high market, and hold priority to cast Minion's Return onto my Gearhulk. When priority is passed, Leinore responds with trying to regenerate their Huntmaster, but Damnation destroys that dream. The board is wiped again, and the Gearhulk comes back from Minion's Return. While it destroys nothing, I do gain 2 bat tokens from the Desecrated Tomb, which I am confused by, but I'll take it. My turn draws me a Gonti Lord of Luxury. I see a light at the end of the game, and begin my machinations. I recast my commander to set for some ETB value, and move to combat. I swing all of my available creatures at the Ziatora player, dealing 7 and dropping them to 2. I pass, holding on to Gonti. Leinore's turn has them cast Scale the Heights. They gain 2 life and draw a card. Harabaz's Druid is then cast, and they pass. 2 Ziatora, and they drop a Graven Cairns. They recast their commander, and the turn rolls. I draw a swamp for the turn. I hold on to it, and move to combat a bit eager. I swing Moira at the Ziatora player, and the Gearhulk at the Leinore player. Neither can block because of the menace innate to both creatures, and the Ziatora player goes down while the Leinore player drops to 21. In the second main, I equip the Sword of the Amis to a bat token, and pass. Leinore's turn has an Heron Blade Elite to the field. Back to me, and I draw another swamp. I drop a swamp, and cast Gonti, getting to exile the top 4 cards of my opponent's deck twice. I choose Sun Titan from the first trigger to resolve, and the Stalwart Pathfinder from the second. I then cast the Titan from exile. When it enters, I return Fleshbag Marauder, and minions return to the field with the double trigger. The enchantment goes onto the Gearhulk, and when the Marauder enters, each of us sacrifice 2 creatures, and I gain 2 bats. I sack the Marauder and a bat token, and the opponent's board is cleared. I then cast Stalwart Pathfinder from exile, and move to combat. When I do, creatures I control gain indestructible, and I swing with Moira, the equipped bat token, and the Gearhulk. But before damage is dealt, I sacrifice Gonti with the high market, gaining 1 life. I deal 10 damage to my opponent, and drop them to 11. Gonti returns to the field thanks to the Moira trigger, bringing 2 bat tokens with them. I exile Victory's Envoy and Machias the Lunarch with the Gonti triggers, and I pass the turn. Leinore passes, taking no actions. My turn gives me Junji, the Midnight Sky. I play a swamp, and move to combat. Every creature I have gains indestructible, and I swing with everything, taking what I think is a large risk against a possible Settle the Wreckage. The Sword and Sun Titan trigger, so I grab a swamp and return the Peregrine Dynamo. No Settle is had in response, and I win the game. Good game to my opponents. Well, that worked out fairly well, though I think that had a lot more to do with 2 factors. The Kaalia player quit fairly early into the game and could have posed a huge threat and a fast threat to the table. I also hit a Sword of the Animist. That helped me ramp out faster than my opponents, especially since I wanted to attack regardless. With that in mind, this deck does need more testing and improvements. As for Moira, I love Menace on all of my commanders, and I'm always happy to see it. Moira's ability also reminds me a lot of Norika's and Heiko's from Kamigawa, though it isn't quite the same trigger event. Thank you for tuning in to another Casual Commander game here on Dirtle Magic. See you next time.